All right, today we're going to dive into a story that has it all: meticulous planning, flawless execution, and the one thing that can make any perfect crime come crashing down: good old human nature. This is the incredible story of the Great Brinks robbery.
So picture this. It's January 17th, 1950. A gang of robbers just walks out of the main Brinks building in Boston with this much money. Now, to give you some perspective, in today's money, that's over $36 million. It was just an absolutely staggering amount of cash, the biggest robbery of its kind in U.S. history at the time.
And you can bet the media went absolutely wild. They immediately dubbed it the crime of the century, and it just completely captured the public's imagination. For years, everybody thought it was the perfect, unsolvable crime. I mean, the robbers had literally vanished without a trace. And that's the real question, isn't it? How does a plan so perfect, a plan that left investigators totally stumped, just unravel? While the answer, as you'll see, has a lot less to do with brilliant detective work and a whole lot more to do with the criminals themselves. Okay, so this was not some spur-of-the-moment job, not even close. To really understand how they pulled this off, you have to go back years. Their success was built on this almost unbelievable foundation of patience and just obsessive planning. The level of persistence here is just incredible. So the idea first sparks way back in 1947. A year later, their target, the main Brinks headquarters, moves to a whole new building. Now, most crews would have just given up, right? Not these guys. They spent the next year just casing the new spot, learning every single detail. They even had 5 false starts. That's 5 different nights they were geared up and ready to go before calling it off. And their audacity, it was on a whole other level. I mean, how do you get keys to a place like Brinks? Well, you don't. Instead, over a period of months, they secretly remove the actual locks from the building, one by one. Then they take them to a specialist on their team who would make a key, and then they'd return the original lock, all without anyone ever noticing. It was just an incredible feat of patience and pure nerve. So, the night of the robbery finally arrives, and after all those years of planning, the heist itself was a masterpiece of speed and efficiency. The whole thing was over and done in just 17 minutes. The 7 robbers who went into that building were completely anonymous. They wore this simple but really effective uniform: a chauffeur's cap, a pea coat, and this is the creepy part: rubber Halloween masks to hide their faces. And of course, each one was carrying a .38 caliber revolver. The timeline of the actual heist is just remarkable. At 7:10 p.m., they're in. Within just 5 minutes, all 5 employees on duty are tied up. By 7:30, they've completely cleaned out the vault. The first alarm isn't even raised until 7:37, long after they've totally vanished into the night. So what did they actually get? Let's start with the cash. They scooped up over $1.2 million, an almost unimaginable amount of money for that time. But, oh, that wasn't all. Nope. On top of all that cash, they grabbed another $1.5 million in checks, money orders, and other securities. This brought their total haul to over $2.7 million. And get this, they were so successful, they couldn't even carry it all. They actually had to leave behind nearly $1 million in coins and silver because it was just too heavy. Imagine that. So for years, this gang was totally in the clear. The perfect crime was a success. But the pressure of keeping that secret, combined with just simple human greed, began to eat away at them from the inside out. And I mean, the official investigation was going absolutely nowhere. Even with the legendary J. Edgar Hoover personally supervising the case and a massive $100,000 reward on the table, the FBI had almost nothing. All they found was a single cap, the rope and tape they used, and the getaway truck, which, by the way, had been meticulously cut into tiny little pieces. The gang felt completely untouchable. You know, the first domino didn't fall because of some brilliant detective work. Nope, it fell from within the gang itself. 2 of the robbers, a guy named Joseph O'Keefe and another named Stanley Gaciora, got arrested for a totally unrelated burglary, and from prison, they started demanding their share of the Brinks money for legal fees. And suddenly, that bond of trust that held the whole gang together, it started to crack. Now, the gang had a pact, a pretty simple one: a vow to kill anyone who snitched. But what do you do when you just suspect someone might talk? Well, they decided not to wait around to find out. The leaders hired a notorious hitman, a guy named Trigger Burke, to kill their own man, O'Keefe. Burke shot him. But, and this is a huge but, O'Keefe survived. And that one failed assassination attempt was about to blow the entire case wide open.
So just like that, the FBI had their opening. But now they were facing a brand new enemy, the clock. You see, the statute of limitations for the robbery was just about to expire.
So, there's Joseph O'Keefe, lying in a hospital bed recovering from an attempt on his life by his own partners. He must have felt like he had nothing left to lose. The FBI approached him, and on January 6, 1956, nearly 6 full years after the heist, he decided to tell them everything. And what a nail-biter this was. Okay, so O'Keefe confesses on the 6th. The FBI scrambles and arrests the rest of the gang on the 12th. Just 5 days later, on January 17th, the statute of limitations would have run out. They all would have walked away scot-free forever. They almost made it.
So, with the gang finally behind bars, what was the actual final outcome of these so-called crime of the century?
Well, in the end, 8 members of the gang got life sentences. But remarkably, all but one of them were actually paroled by 1971. And Joseph O'Keefe, the guy whose confession broke the whole case, he got off with just 4 years. But what about the money? To me, this is the most astonishing part of the whole story. Of the nearly $2.8 million they stole, only about $58,000 was ever recovered. The rest of it just vanished. And that really leaves us with this one final lingering question. Yeah, the robbers were caught. Their lives were ruined by paranoia and prison. But the vast majority of the money was never found. So, was the Great Brinks robbery ultimately a failure? Or, in some strange way, was it a success? Something to think about. Thanks for tuning in.